Hello all sentient beings and welcome to Transmissions Alt Mode, where we talk all news, comics, and media related to the... On this episode of Transmissions Alt Mode, we're joined by Greig from the Unfunny Nerd Tangent as we review the final issue of Transformers Lost Light. Beast Wars Scorponok joins Transformers Forged to Fight, and we have a whole energon cube full of Bumblebee movie news. Today is Friday, November 9th, 2018, and this is episode 102 of Transmissions Alt Mode.
Welcome to Transmissions Alt Mode, the podcast that, like the Lost Light, has achieved something. I'm your host, Charles, aka Big C, and I'm joined by the excellent Transmissions team. Jeremy, aka Yakko.
Hey, how you doing?
And Daryl, the Cybertronian Beast.
Hey. Let's talk Transformers.
All right, and again, we are joined by Greig from the Unfunny Nerd Tangent.
Hi, I'm not doing the yodel again. I've only one a day. But yeah, thank you for having me. I'm back, and yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun, I think. I'm ready to, I don't know, argue about Lost Light and other things.
All right, well, we are happy to have you. And as always, we're going to start off with thanking our Donatreons, the fine folks who continue to give us money on Patreon and PayPal. We don't have any new donations this week, but we do want to mention that our latest Transmissions Declassified, number 14, that was for the month of October. That's out. It was out last week, so you can go download it at your leisure. And Jeremy, what is this episode about?
This episode, it is more of an alt mode type of declassified. It's all about the current state of Transformers media, which is why I named it the State of Transformers Media. And we talk about the impending ending of the IDW continuity, what comes next, Cyberverse, Bumblebee Movie. We even get some Marvel movie talk in there for some reason, or Marvel Comics. I can't remember where that tied in, but Daryl was wrong about something Marvel. And then we also talk a little bit about the trading card game, which exploded and was like huge at TFCon, and yet I still didn't get to play a single game. So that it was a really good conversation. And if I didn't mention, we had Evangelist and Aaron from WTFTFW on, and we recorded it in person. It was really awesome.
Cool. So yeah, if you are a Donatreon, you can check that out right now. And if you want to listen, just go to transmissionspodcast.com/support and sign up. And for as little as $1, you will get access to all of our episodes of Transmissions Declassified. We do a monthly show just for the Donatreons. All right, we've also got some new merchandise at our new store that is now powered by TeePublic. So if you go to transmissionspodcast.com/shop, you can check out all the items on our t-shirt store. We are TeePublic, the website, is running a pre-Black Friday sale that starts November 12th through November 18th. And on that sale, all t-shirts are $14. So that's a pretty good deal and should make great Christmas presents. So if you thought you might want to get a Transmissions shirt, but you thought maybe they were a little bit pricey, I think if you just if you wait a week or less than a week, as the time this recording goes up, you know, just a couple of days, you'll be able to order them for $14. So check out our store there. All right, let's start the show with some comics news. So we have another manga coming out of Takara Tomy. They usually do mangas to support their legends. You know, these are basically the Generations figures that Hasbro releases in the US or around the world, and these are the ones that Takara Tomy releases in Japan. And they have a manga that will, have a little story that ties into the figures. This one is focusing on Big Powered, the new Big Powered figure that we talked about a few weeks ago. I think this one, I think a lot of these are drawn by Hayato Sakamoto, so I think this one is too. And they have a lot of references to G1 characters. I think this one looks like there's Primacron in the artwork there. Since it's in Japanese, I can't really read the story, but it looks like it takes place in 2025. Wheeljack and Perceptor are there. Primacron is working with them for some reason. And somehow big power gets created. But yeah, so it is a comic, so we should talk about it in alt mode. But yeah, without actually being able to read the story, I guess there's not much we can say. But we'll have a link to that in the show notes, so you can check that out if you are curious. I think eventually they one of the board members at TFW 2005 will get a translation out. So probably by the time this goes up, they might have a translation available. So
yeah, listen to Moonbase 2 in a week or two, and I'm sure they'll have it.
Yeah. All right, so that's the only comics news this week. So let's get into our comic review. So this is Lost Light number 25, How to Say Goodbye and Mean It, Part 2. Written by James Roberts, art by Jack Lawrence, colors by Joanna LaFuente, letters by Tom B. Long, editor David Marriott, and publisher Greg Goldstein. So we have 3 covers, and appropriately these 3 covers are by the 3, I would say, major artists for the Lost Light More Than Meets the Eye storyline. Cover A is Jack Lawrence with a group shot of the Lost Lighters. And that's Jack Lawrence art, colors by Joanna LaFuente. Cover B is Nick Roche with Rodimus walking away as the Lost Light shadow cast behind him with various artifacts from the story of the Lost Light. So, and the banner "We Achieve Something" hanging there. So that's art by Nick Roche and colors by Josh Burcham. And lastly, the retailer incentive cover is our favorite Alex Milne, our favorite artist, I should say, doing another group shot of the Lost Light with colors by Josh Perez. So I think it's fitting that these 3 artists and colorists get these covers. So Greg, I'll start with you. Which cover do you pick as your favorite?
I like all 3, but I think if I had to choose one, I would probably go for the Nick Roche one. I just think that seems to... I know this is Lost Light and not necessarily More Than Meets the Eye, but I mean, we all know it's the same thing. I think that one... I think that one sort of encapsulates the general feel of what Roberts has done with his with both series, because it is kind of like there's a juxtaposition there. Like, it's, look at all this, it's the greatest hits of stuff. Like, there's Cyclonus's sword and the half a Matrix and Brainstorm's briefcase and things like that. But then it does have a bit of a somber quality to it as well, with Rodimus walking away there. So, and obviously the outline of the Lost Light as his shadow, which you could read into that all types of things, I guess. Like, he's forever in the shadow of what happened and things like all that sort of stuff. But which I know Nick is big on that kind of stuff. But I like that one the best.
Cool. Jeremy, which cover do you like?
I kind of hate that I have to pick one because, like Greg said, they're all really good. I'm kind of going back and forth between Nick and Alex. And I mean, I really like Nick, and like you said, it does kind of summarize the entire, More Than Meets the Eye Lost Light storyline with all of the different pieces there. But I think Alex gets it on sheer number of characters he can fit into a single page, because it looks like every single character that's ever appeared in the series are in this image. And that is just impressive. And then the coloring that Josh did on it kind of has, I don't know, it looks like it's more of a kind of glossy look to it. It looks really nice.
That would be a great poster.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And then it also has more than meets the eye and text at the bottom. And I'm pretty sure Tom Belong put that in there.
Yeah, that's awesome. I didn't notice that. But yeah.
And Daryl, which one are you going for?
Well, I agree with everybody that they're all actually pretty good, but honestly, it's Alex's cover here is just phenomenal. Really, he's knocked it out of the park once again, and I got to give kudos to Tom Belong for taking the black box out of the from behind the title logo for all three of these and letting the art shine through. So yeah, but yeah, Alex's cover is just phenomenal, and I love it how he's thrown his signature right dead center in the fucking thing. Like, here I am, like, This is me. I love it. It's that's Alex's. It's his style. This has always been his book, as far as I'm concerned. Him and James, yeah, I'm glad to see him get a really great cover on the last book.
Yeah, I agree. These are really all top-notch covers, and it's hard for me to choose, but I feel like Jack Lawrence's cover kind of encapsulates the Lost Light storyline. At least I feel like in Jack Lawrence's cover, we've got all these little touches that really touch on the characters. Like, you see Minimus Ambus straightening Rodimus's badge. You've got Nautica and Brainstorm, looking at enjoying a video together. You've got a Velocity and Swerve, looking back at each other, which is they had kind of they were paired. It was like brief. It was a blink and you miss it in the storyline, but they had a few fun interactions. And then you've got Cyclonus and Tailgate gazing lovingly in each other's eyes there, with Whirl in the background smiling over them. So I really like the kind of the personal touches that go into Jack Lawrence's cover here that really show off the characters, and it makes me feel like this is really kind of a capper on the Lost Light storyline, even though this is the whole long saga of More Than Meets the Eye and Lost Light. But that is not to say that I don't really like the other two covers. I think Nick Roche's cover is great for encapsulating the whole saga, and Alex Milne's cover is just great for showing off his awesome style with the characters and putting all those characters in the frame there. So yeah. So since Yoshi couldn't be here, he decided to record a little bit for us so he could participate in the conversation too. So Jeremy, if you could play Yoshi's pick for his favorite cover.
So my pick for my favorite final Lost Light cover, I just want to say Jack Lawrence clearly brought his A game here. Nick Roche does Nick Roche. He does it super well. If you love his art, you know what to expect, and you're going to love his cover. But holy shit, did Alex just decimate the field here. It's like Jack and Alex had the same idea. Let's include as many characters from More Than Meets the Eye and Lost Light that we can on the cover. And where Jack has them all crammed together as much, being buddy-buddy, you've got Alex with probably double the characters on the cover. And to just show how boss he is, there's a ton of white space on his. There's like room between everybody, where Jack's got everybody crammed together so he can fit all the bots. Like Alex is just playing on a whole nother field here. This is impressive as shit. And as another fuck you to James Roberts and to IDW, he's got his signature damn near in the center of the book, using up some of that white space. I mean, that is impressive, amazing. I am awestruck, and I am just wow. That's all I can say. Alex makes his cover look so effortless, and I have no doubt in my mind this was a huge effort to get all of these guys in here and to make it look like they weren't cramped and to make it look effortless. I'm sure there was a ton of effort that went into this. And there's even a complete difference in Josh Perez's and LaFuente's coloring style, where it seems to me on Alex's cover, Josh used every inch of white space as well as the bots. I picture, I don't know if this is true or not, but I do picture Alex emailing this to Josh right before TFCon, because that's about the time when this had to have been finished. And Josh being like, dude, we've got to go to a convention, and this is a huge project. You want me to color? I mean, it's just, there's just a level here of gameplay that exceeds everything else we're seeing on these covers. And, you know, I know I've talked about Alex, you know, egging him to put his signature near the center of the book before. It's nice to know that we on this show had a teeny tiny little bit of influence in what he does. And that's impressive. It brings a smile to my face. You can probably hear it. This cover is just absolutely gorgeous. And in the off chance that my comic book store carries it this Wednesday, I am going to pick it up because there's too much history here not to do it. I mean, it's just on some level, and understanding the story on some level, it's just wow. But he just decimated this playing field, and I have to pick Alex's cover.
Okay, I question Yoshi's timeline there. I think the covers have to be done a little bit further in advance than the week before the comic comes out.
TFCon Canada.
Oh, okay, maybe.
That's how I heard it.
But yeah, so I think these are all great covers. So yeah, lots of good options. All right, let's get into the story for the final issue. So this is a bit. It's an interesting issue because it is pretty much a wrap up. It's, you know, the major story was pretty much done last issue, so this is really kind of a farewell to the characters. So let's talk about it. All right. The battle with the Functionists is long over, and peace has come to New Cybertron. At Rivet's Field, the former crew of the Lost Light has gathered to bid farewell to one of their own. Presiding over the ceremony, the officiating bot delivers a touching eulogy for Ratchet, who has succumbed to a terminal illness of age-related spark burnout. Ratchet's final wishes were to donate his component parts to medical centers across New Cybertron and donate the gifts of innermost energon from thousands of bots contributed in his memory to the Luna 1 Resettlement Fund. The official ends the eulogy with, "Even in death, he chose life." Not his words, but the words of his longtime conjunx endura, Drift. And we realize that this funeral is happening hundreds, maybe thousands of years after the defeat of the Functionists and the liberation of New Cybertron. Flashing way back to just after the final battle with the Functionists, and after Unicron was stopped on Earth, Prowl, still missing an eye, has come to visit Rodimus on New Cybertron. Prowl is here to take Megatron back into custody, so he can stand trial again. Rodimus tries to argue, but Prowl points out that the only reason Megatron was allowed to go on the Lost Light in the first place was because he demanded to be judged by the Knights of Cybertron. And since their quest proved they didn't exist, Megatron still has to answer for his crimes. Rodimus is ready for a fight and continues to protest, but Megatron stops him. Megatron will surrender himself for judgment willingly. Prowl also tells Rodimus they need to decommission the Lost Light. Since its quantum engines are super powerful, they could double New Cybertron's energy reserves by hooking them up to an energon refinery. Rodimus protests again, but Prowl reminds him that there is a shortage of energon and 1 billion sparks on Luna 1 that will need resources to be brought online to live alongside the rest of the population. Rodimus relents. Prowl suggests that after they remove the quantum engines, they can put the ship on display as a tribute to the crew that saved the universe. Rodimus finally agrees to all this, but he wants one thing in return, a final voyage of honor for the Lost Light and its crew before it is grounded forever. Prowl agrees, and the crew of the Lost Light, including the scavengers, sets out for one final voyage. A little bit later, out in space, after their victory lap is done, Ultra Magnus signals that it's time to return to New Cybertron. Rodimus and the rest of the crew all react differently. Swerve wanted a week or more instead of just a day, but Ratchet points out that everything ends at some point. They're lucky to see it coming. Megatron is grateful for just one more day. Meanwhile, Chrome Dome and Rewind have returned from canvassing the ship. Rewind has digitally captured every part of the ship in his archive for posterity. Chrome Dome mentions how there was so much of the ship they hadn't seen before, even though they'd lived on it for years. Curiously, he remarks how they found an office with a couch on the lower decks with shelves full of model spaceships. Apparently, now no one on the crew remembers Rung after he gave his life to save New Cybertron. Roller asks why everyone is so sad. Can't they still use the ship even without its quantum engines? Rodimus points out that the ship will be requisitioned into service for New Cybertron or set up as a monument to never be used again. Rodimus doesn't want to see either of those things happen. He wants the ship to have a proper ending. But before they do that, everyone goes for one last drink at Swerve's. Everyone takes a break to reminisce on the adventures they've had. In particular, Drift now realizes that the prophetic visions he had might have just been the Madiri telepaths projecting the future into his mind in the past through the Warren time-space wormhole. Well, actually, it's Ratchet's theory, since he needs some kind of rational explanation rather than just a leap of faith. So Ratchet and Drift have reconciled their faith versus science debate and are ready to move forward together, taking their relationship to the next level. Finally, Thunderclash enters with Rodimus's old desk that has the Matrix map he carved into it. The crew excitedly looks at the map and points out the highlights of their journey on the map. And we hear an untold story of the crew's run-in with the Improbability Police. Megatron observes that this is how we should measure our lives, by these little moments of joy. Ultra Magnus agrees and recites his favorite poem, "You flare, you flicker, you fade." And Megatron completes the poem, which it turns out he wrote 4 million years ago. Reciting the poem sadly reminds Megatron on how so much of his life was wasted. Ultra Magnus wants to make a final toast. He reflects on how when he originally joined the quest, he wanted to go on a journey to forge professional relationships and expand his skill set, but that didn't happen. What he did get was what he actually needed, companions and lifelong friends. This is all too much for Swerve. He doesn't want it to end. He wants to lock themselves in and keep going, but it's too late. Before they had their last drink, they'd already docked back on New Cybertron, and demolition machines are already taking the Lost Light apart. As the ceiling of Swerve's bar is ripped away, Rodimus signals that this is the last drink and they're done. Everyone goes their separate ways. The Scavengers, Nickel, and Grimlock head off on another misadventure. Nautica is meeting up with her friend Chromia to visit Earth, and everyone else promises to keep in touch. Cyclonus gives Rodimus a kiss on the cheek and thanks him for everything before he and Tailgate depart together. Finally, Prowl is waiting to take custody of Megatron. Rodimus still protests Megatron's treatment, but Megatron stops him again. Ultra Magnus hesitates, but Rodimus encourages him to go with Megatron to serve as his advocate again at the trial. As they drive off, Rodimus calls out to them a final till all are one. Sometime later, the trial is over, and Rodimus comes to see Megatron one last time in his cell. Ultra Magnus tells Rodimus the Galactic Council is deciding Megatron's final punishment, death or infinite imprisonment. Rodimus reassures Magnus he did all he could for Megatron's defense, and Magnus replies that Rodimus's testimony helped too. Of course, Magnus doesn't know Rodimus lied when he said that Megatron could open the Matrix when Rodimus couldn't during the Functionist battle, but that carried a lot of weight with even some religious organic races. Rodimus goes in to visit Megatron. Megatron shows Rodimus that he kept the Rodimus star he'd given Megatron so long ago. From his perspective, it was 819 years ago since he spent those centuries in the Functionist universe. He treasured it as the only link to his old and best life on the Lost Light. Magnus interrupts. The council has reached a verdict, and they have to return to the sentencing chamber. Megatron tells Rodimus as he leaves that whatever his final fate, he deserves worse. We go back to the future after the ceremony for Ratchet. Life has taken the Lost Lighters in various directions after their quest ended. Cyclonus and Tailgate are still together. Swerve opened a franchise chain of 113 bars across the universe, but his business failed and he had to close all but one. Nautica has written a memoir of her life on the Lost Light and is touring on a book signing. Chrome Dome was a grief counselor, but he gave that up to permanently look after Rewind, who is now stuck in miniature memory stick mode. Rewind became obsessed with learning about Functionist Cybertron and absorbed too much information from the data archives, overloading his internal archive and corrupting his brain. He's so far gone now that he cannot remember how to transform back into robot mode. Nautica gives Minimus Ambus a copy of her book and asks him how the harvest of the Luna 1 sparks is going. Ambus tells her they've brought 500 million new Lunarians online and helped them into lives and jobs of their choosing. Nautica asks if it's been difficult integrating the Lunarians into the rest of New Cybertron's population. And Ambus says they've blended in incredibly, almost too well. Sometimes it's hard to notice they're even there. Meanwhile, Drift comes to talk to Whirl, who had to have a day release from prison at Garrus 10 for the funeral, and has a gift for him from Ratchet. As Whirl is being led back to prison, Cyclonus and Tailgate stop to talk to him. Whirl's been aimless in the years since their quest ended, committing petty crimes and being imprisoned over and over again. So Cyclonus asks if after he serves this last sentence, maybe he should come to live with him and Tailgate in Tetrahex. Whirl agrees with a big hug. As he gets into the prison transport, Whirl turns to the officiating funeral bot, who turns out to be a Lunarian. The Lunarians apparently all look like a certain psychiatrist Autobot who the crew of the Lost Light don't remember. He tells Lunarian 113 to give Ratchet's final gift, his one-of-a-kind hands, back to Drift. Whirl declares he's not broken and doesn't need fixing. Finally, a shuttlecraft lands and Rodimus emerges. Rodimus apologizes to Drift, saying he came as soon as he heard, but he was off-world on the other end of the Acklaw system. Rodimus adds a final gift to the vials of innermost energon, Megatron's Rodimus Star. Drift comes to talk with Rodimus and asks if he's alright. Rodimus puts on a brave face, saying he's still having great adventures on his new ship. But Drift points out it's not really the same, is it? Rodimus looks back sadly. Before he leaves, Drift asks Rodimus, does he think it worked? Rodimus says they agreed never to talk about it, but Drift insists. Rodimus answers he doesn't know and he doesn't think they'll ever know, which is good because they can keep believing it did. We make a final flashback to the Lost Light's victory lap just before they decided to return to New Cybertron. Before they go home, Nautica tells Rodimus she, Brainstorm, and Perceptor have figured out a little magic trick. They explain that Brainstorm's time machine briefcase created infinite parallel universes, and the Lost Light's quantum engines malfunctioned on their maiden voyage and created a duplicate Lost Light. What if they could do it again? They could rig the Lost Light's engine so that when they make their final jump back to New Cybertron, they create a duplicate Lost Light in another universe. That way, a version of the crew could continue on a new quest and explore a whole new universe. Perceptor points out that the chances of this working are very small, but it's worth trying. Rodimus says he has to put it to a vote for the crew, but he is emphatically on board. They make the quantum jump, and the second Lost Light materializes in open space. They check the instruments, and they're definitely not in their home universe. Rodimus jumps for joy. Brainstorm pats himself on the back, and Perceptor gives him credit too. Brainstorm is ecstatic that Perceptor finally acknowledges his genius. Everyone is excited at the prospect of exploring a whole new universe. Magnus asks how long it will take for them to explore an entire universe. Rodimus says if he had to guess, it'll be more or less forever. He turns to co-captain Megatron and asks what does he think? And Megatron answers yes. He thinks forever sounds about right. And that is the end of Lost Light. I had a couple of notes before we get into the full discussion. So one thing I was curious about is why Prowl is still in charge. Like, after all the shit he pulled in Robots in Disguise and Transformers, why is he like in charge of anything back on,
Yeah. His rank should have been stripped.
Yeah. But
maybe he redeemed himself with the whole Unicron thing.
Maybe. I don't know. But
Optimus Prime is very forgiving, though. Like, he will be, that's all right.
Also, how much paperwork was lost when Cybertron was destroyed?
Yeah.
So you can have your job back, but you have to stay with one eye. That's the deal.
Another thing I notice is, so in the pages where they're looking at the Matrix map and recalling the improbability police, this is actually a story that James Roberts told in his panel at TFCon Toronto. I don't know if he told it at the TFCon Chicago panel, but he told this exact story at the TFCon Toronto panel, and he said, yeah, this was a story I wasn't able to work into Lost Light. We didn't have space, but if we had gotten to do this story, they would have been arrested by the improbability police, and then Ultra Magnus would have argued that the charges were too ludicrous to be real. So I just found it funny that he snuck that in the one of the pages of the final book.
Yeah, I think I remember him mentioning something about it, but I don't know if he told the whole story.
Okay, I think I have video of the TFCon Toronto panel, so I'll see if I can find that. Another thing, in one of the pages when the crew is all splitting up after the Lost Light is destroyed, Chrome Dome and Rewind mentioned that they're going to Milnex. So I think that's a little tribute to Alex Milne there. The crew forgot about Rung. In the last issue, it said, "Don't forget about me," but they all forgot about him. They completely forgot about him. But all the Lunarians look like him, so I guess 50, you gain some and you lose some. So all the Lunarians look exactly like Rung, but no one remembers Rung. So also, after the end of the issue, Roberts has a little farewell letter where he talks about he thanks all the artists that work with him and all the other people at IDW who worked with him. He also counts up the 100 issues. This was a thing we had a discussion about this on Twitter a few months ago. So I'll link to my tweet in the show notes. But I was questioning where that 100 issue tally came from. And so he puts it in here, but he does count the two prose stories as separate quote unquote issues to get from 98 to 100. I said actually you could count the Titans Return one shot that he did with John Barber and Margaret Scott, and you could also count Spotlight Orion Pax that he doesn't mention here. So I guess we'll call it even.
Well, and frankly, the prose issues, I mean, that would actually be 2 or 3 issues if it wasn't made into a comic.
Yeah. So
his count is low.
And I guess one other thing, and actually it's funny, I swear Yoshi and I did not talk about this, and I didn't listen to Yoshi's thing before I put this point down in my notes, but I felt like this story really, and this is kind of I think emblematic of the whole Lost Light, the difference between Lost Light and More Than Meets the Eye, in my view, is that in Lost Light, James Roberts really is trying to have his cake and eat it too. Like, in this storyline, you have both the bittersweet, poignant ending of all the crew after their adventures on the Lost Light, but then you have this trap door where they get to go off and have a bunch of new adventures as well. So you can have this book both be kind of a farewell to these characters that they have bittersweet ending, but it's also a new beginning. You can have it launch 1 million fanfics where everyone can write their own story about what the crew of the Lost Light is doing. You could even maybe 5 or 10 years from now, they bring James Roberts back, and you have a new ongoing series called Lost and Found with the new adventures of the Lost Light. But yeah, so I mean that kind of for me it kind of lessens the impact, the emotional impact of this story, where you open the trap door and everyone has a happy ending anyway. But I still really liked all the story points here, and Megatron's fate is left ambiguous. So I mean that's fine. I think that's it's a I think all the little character moments were really great here. Just of course there's definitely no action here. I think there's even a comment where when they're doing their final trip, and Megatron is talking about how he's grateful for just this one more day, and World points out literally nothing happened. We flew past some planets and talked. And Megatron says yes, and I wouldn't have changed a thing. So Daryl, I feel like that's speaking directly to you. Yeah, there's no action here, but that's the way I wanted it.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so I think overall it's a good end. I would say I would have picked either the bittersweet ending or the happy ending, but not both. But Roberts wanted to have both, so I also think I think Jack Roberts' art, or Jack Lawrence's art, is really expressive here. I think all the facial expressions really sell it in the art here. I really think he did a good job for this final issue, and it's 24 pages, so you get 4 extra pages here. So I'm happy with this ending, and I think it was time. So, all right, Greg, I'll let you go next. So maybe you can give your thoughts on this issue, and maybe your thoughts on the entire series as well.
Sure. I mean, I've really enjoyed the series. I especially liked it probably in the early days when it was more than meets the eye, and then you had Robots in Disguise as kind of a counterpoint to it, and occasionally you would get sort of crossovers that, like sort of backdoor crossovers almost. There was that one issue early on, you probably know exactly what number it is, Charles, where they talk about Chrome Dome and Prowl being sort of ex-partners and stuff like that, and then in the flashback where they were going to steal the Matrix, and that arc where we got the Shockwave reveal. And then I remember there was something in RID as well where they referenced Chrome Dome, or there was a flashback to Chrome Dome and Prowl or something. So if you were reading both books every month, it would sort of link over almost without them having to actually do a crossover. The Dark Cybertron stuff was a bit of a hiccup, I thought. I thought it would have been better if that had just been an RID thing. I don't like the idea of we're away on a quest and then we can just come back and then just go again. Like that kind of... not ruined anything, but I would have preferred it as if it was like they were kind of almost trapped in deep space and things like that. It's not as simple as just zipping back to Cybertron whenever they needed to. But again, that's a real nitpick for me. Nothing I would sort of criticize too harshly or anything like that. But in general, I liked it. A couple of actual criticisms I have had of the series the longer it went on was I did feel that Roberts kind of wrote most of the characters with the same voice. They were all kind of that quippy, sarcastic, smart aleck character for a bit there. You had a couple of characters that were a little bit different, but for a while there, Rodimus and Brainstorm and Whirl and Swerve and Misfire, and they all kind of had the same, like they could have interchanged one-liners and things like that almost to a degree, but that's all right. And in general, I liked the Chrome Dome Rewind stuff when it first occurred, and then all the backstory, and they're like, oh, this is cool. Like, this is a good spin on sort of a newer take on, I mean, not gay Transformers, but for lack of a better term, that's kind of what it was, which is cool. It's sort of all inclusive of everyone. But I felt that Roberts did feel the need. He had to pair everybody up by the time the show was, or the comic was finished. And I thought, like, yeah, not everyone has to be like a couple, but that's okay. I mean, whatever. Nothing wrong with it. But I mean, the Tailgate Cyclonus stuff I thought worked in general. But I mean, you mentioned how Swerve and Velocity were kind of, for half a second, they were almost like hinted at being a couple and things like that. And it's like, all right, whatever. Not everyone needs a partner.
Yeah, I mean, in this book, like if you look at that final scene and when they're all chilling in the bar, it looks like even Roller and Nickel are about to hook up. Where Roller's like, "Oh, your wheels are nice."
I mean, you look at that cover, the first the Jack Lawrence cover. If we go all the way back to that, and that is like, it's just pairing after pairing after pairing almost. I mean, if you look at the top, you've got Rewind and Chrome Dome, you've got Tailgate and Cyclonus, and Whirl was always kind of like the third wheel and sort of the angel devil on their shoulders, like the whole series, which worked really well. But then you do have Velocity and Swerve there together. Brainstorm and Nautica, there was kind of hints of romantic tension with them as well during the series here and there. Anode and Lug, obviously. And then all of a sudden, like Ratchet and Drift are romantically linked in the last couple of episodes and things like, or issues and things like that. And it's like, and that's fine. But, you know, the only ones that sort of aren't definite couples are like Rodimus and Magnus. And I mean, or Minimus. So, I mean, it's not that I'm against the coupling. I just don't think everyone needs to be a couple. So, and a lot of TV shows and things do tend to do that. Like, let's pair them up, and then, you know, it's a very sitcom-y soap opera thing to do. Like, let's break up pair A and B and put them with C and D and things like that. So, but again, it even nothing felt like, too bad, you know.
Yeah, it even felt like in the comic maybe Megatron and Magnus were about to pair up there.
Well,
too.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Rodimus even, you could even argue Rodimus is sort of saying goodbye, you know, or so, like what might have been or something, you know, I don't know. And again, it's not the coupling, it's just, it seemed to be overdone. It's like the Rewind Chrome Dome thing was like a really special thing. When it started, it was like, wow, look how good this is, and it got a heap of praise, and rightly so, because it was really well handled. And then the Tailgate Cyclonus thing was kind of a different spin on it, because like Chrome Dome and Rewind are both Autobots through and through, whereas Cyclonus is historically a villain, like this cold, murderous sort of character. So to see him fall in love, essentially, especially with a character that's sort of small and cute and lovable like Tailgate, like that's such a juxtaposition. I thought it sort of worked. I don't think it was amazing or it was faultless by any stretch. I probably, if I had my choice, I probably would have let Tailgate die at the end of was it Remain in Light, the first?
Yeah,
where he did the show. I mean, I thought that would have been incredible, and you could have really gone some dark places with Cyclonus there, but he did kind of wuss out a bit, I guess, and go, oh, I'll save him. He got a bit too... he sort of fell in love with it. Roberts kind of fell in love with his own characters a little bit, I think. But,
yeah,
you know, I can't criticize him for that. It's again, they're not negative nitpicks. They're just minor things. But as far as this issue goes, I thought the art was really good. I thought this is probably one of the better ones that Lawrence has done. It's very, very close to a Nick Roche style, which I really like. So I agree with you about the expressive faces and things like that. Like, especially the sort of last couple of pages with Rodimus and Megatron, and then him with Drift at Ratchet's grave. Essentially, like there is some good. He's happy, he's sad. There's a real melancholy look on his face in one panel, and he's sort of overjoyed in another. I like the Brainstorm got a briefcase again. I thought that was a cool little sort of nod. Prowl, I like that Prowl he got something to do, at least, no matter how minor, since if you think about it, like would the quest have ever really started if Prowl had told Rodimus not to do it? Like Rodimus is sort of like, no, F you, I'm going to do it anyway. It's like the two kids trying to win approval from Dad, Optimus Prime as Dad type thing.
And Prowl's even at the funeral in the future too.
Yeah. So that's cool. I like that. I mean, I am a Prowl fan, so that probably helped. But I like Rodimus too. I'm probably one of the only people that actually liked Hot Rod from back in the day. No mention of Optimus Prime. Might be a little worrying, but we'll see what happens, I guess. We never learn Megatron's fate, which, I don't know how I feel about that. Like, it did kind of come down to, well, you'll be in prison forever or you're going to die. And it was just, we don't ever learn what happened. But maybe that's, I don't know, maybe he'll appear in Unicron or Optimus Prime 25 or something like that. Who knows? I can't necessarily see it happening, but I still would be surprised if the end of a particular Transformers universe or continuity sort of doesn't address Megatron and Optimus Prime like one last time or something like that. I don't know. But if that's where we leave that Megatron, well, that's okay. That's fine. I don't have a problem with it. What else did we have? Rung. Now, I was surprised at they forgot about him almost straight away. But then I thought, well, that's kind of fitting because if they've spent millions and millions of years of not being able to remember him, all of a sudden saying like, oh, that's okay, we'll remember you. It's deeply ingrained in their makeups that they forget this guy. But I thought that, I mean, I'm probably wrong, but I thought when Whirl had his little tell Ratchet I don't need his hands moment, and the guard or whatever it was, I'm just trying to find it on the page here. So the guard sort of makes a point of removing his helmet, and then you see the close-up. Mm-hmm. I assumed that was Rung. Like, everyone's forgotten him and he can go back to just kind of being Primus again and kind of keeping an eye on his children and stuff like that. Because the look on the guy's face, and I don't know, I thought that was more of an actual like subtle little thing of saying like, look, there he is. Like maybe he did sneak off into the ceiling or in the last issue, or he grew back or regenerated or whatever, as they'd established that he would constantly sort of self-repair. So I'm not saying that I'm right, but that's how I took it when I first read it, that the guy holding the Ratchet's hands, that's Rung, checking in on his... That's kind of how I read it. Checking in on his kids type thing. And the look on his face when Whirl says, I'm not broken and I don't need fixing. It's like, oh, look, my one of my most difficult psychiatric cases has kind of come good in a sense. Like, I don't know. That was just my take on it. But then when you see the other guy that's sort of flying Rodimus's non-rod pod, and that guy looks like Rung too. It's like, oh, okay, well, yeah. So, or maybe they're all Rung and he's everywhere because he's God. I don't know. Yeah, that was most of it. I did think a little bit of the having his cake and eating it too, like a little bit of like, oh, kind of a cop out, like, because it's not really a happy ending if you just look at the original bots. Like it is that thing where you leave a workplace or move away and it's keep in touch, every week, and then after like 4 weeks or 3 weeks or whatever it is, people just move on and they have other things to do. So the scavengers, off they went, and they wrapped up the Cyclonus tailgate sort of story, and Whirl kind of, you can come live with us, and it's like, yeah, that's cool. They did wrap up a bunch of stuff with the characters, but then Rewind sort of gets a bummer ending because he's essentially reduced to being a memory stick for real, but then at least he can still sort of communicate with Chrome Dome and stuff like that. So another bittersweet ending. And Swerve, I was worried for Swerve reading through the book because he's the one being like, no, we should have asked for 3 days or a week or a month, or like, no, I like Swerve was having a real issue not being on the Lost Light anymore. And I thought, they're all going to go their separate ways and they're all going to do their own thing, and we're going to have some final gut punch or something of where like Swerve just sort of, I don't know, unplugs himself, or, you know, like just takes himself out because he can't handle it. And that would be sort of the final, not the final moment, but Roberts has historically sort of gone, here's a bunch of things you want, and then bam, guess what? I'm killing this person, or this is happening. It's like, like the Skids thing, you know, like, Skids has given us all superpowers so we can fight the DJD, but then he dies. And Ratchet Ravage as well, those kinds of things. But Swerve kind of just gets his happy ending as well. But the whole duplicate Lost Light going off to discover the new universe forever or whatever, like, I didn't have a big problem with it. I'm kind of like, okay, cool. So, because it is sort of a fitting end in a sense.
Like I said, I think this is launching 1,000 fanfics.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, no one ever thought we would get the Marvel comics back either, and Furman ended up doing Regeneration 1, so whether people liked it or they didn't, we still got it, and no one ever thought that would ever happen. So I'm not saying this needs a follow-up or anything, but I mean, these days they bring back everything, so... You know, there's been new seasons of TV shows and sequels to movies that we thought were finished and done and dusted. I mean, Star Wars has come back and all kinds of things. So, yeah, in general, I was pretty happy with it. I know there's a lot of people out there that are like Daryl, like, you know, there's not enough fighting, and you like your Transformers to be sort of, you know, heroic Autobots fighting a war against the evil Decepticons and all that. And I mean, I love all that stuff too, but I think why I liked More Than Meets the Eye and Lost Light, it was something different than that, because like literally every other Transformers story is that. So while I love all that too, I like this just because it was a bit different, and it was kind of Star Trek / Red Dwarf with Transformers. But, you know, I certainly couldn't... Like, I wouldn't tell anyone they were wrong for not liking this comic or this series or anything. Because, yeah, if you like big robots fighting, well, that's not really the series for you, I guess. But, yeah. But I in general, I liked it. I thought at its peak, More Than Meets the Eye was some of the best comics I've ever read. And even at its worst, when I was starting to think, like, oh, no, is this going off the rails with some of the personality tics and some of the Anode and Lug and that sort of stuff. It all kind of circled back around to work in general, in my opinion, I think. So, yeah. All in all, I'm pretty pleased with it.
Daryl, let's hear your thoughts.
Okay. Well... I didn't really like the book all that much. No surprise there. The time jumping back and forth confused the hell out of me. I couldn't figure out which time we were in. So perhaps clearing that out at the start would have been great. I didn't mind them talking about like all the old, like going over memories and stuff like that. Like when Thunderclash brought out the table or the desk, that was kind of fun. It's what everyone would have done in their if it was them in that situation. You kind of go through the memories. I think in the end, I think Megatron was sentenced to death. That's why the Rodimus star was put out there, because if it not, then he would still have it. And the ending of the book where the ship gets to go on and have more adventures is bullshit. That I knew he couldn't kill his own characters. That's, that's just stupid. The whole universe is ending, except for the Lost Light stuff that gets to go on and live on an unknown world. Yeah, so that's a bullshit ending that I'm really kind of PO'd about. The art was fine. I had no problem with the art in this book. It looked decent, got the point across. I guess about the pairing up of all the characters and stuff, to find out that Drift and Ratchet were a couple was something that I really wasn't super happy about as well. Why can't anyone just be friends, and just be comrades and stuff? They all have to be freaking married. They don't just let them be friends. This is it's there's too much relationshipness in this book. It's I didn't like that either. I guess there's more that I wanted to say, but I've forgotten it. I'm happy that the book is done and we can move on to something else. It's I've had enough of all the relationship stuff out of this book. So yeah, I'm happy it's over.
Fair enough. All right, Jeremy, what did you think?
I enjoyed it. Start with the art. I think this is probably Jack's best book. I mean, the art was really good throughout the entire thing. And then I noticed, like, if you look at Rodimus in particular, in the funeral scenes versus the present day scenes, you can tell if this is really an aged Rodimus that has just been through the ringer. And then the next page, it's back to the young, enthusiastic Rodimus. And I thought that was a nice touch that I didn't notice until after reading it again before the show. The other characters you don't really get to see in detail as much. So, the only one you can really tell is older is Drift, because he has the more ornate stuff on him. A few things I liked with Prowl. I didn't notice that he was at the funeral till you pointed it out, but you don't get to see his eye. So, when I first read it, the whole flash forward, flash present, whatever, it confused me at first, and then I realized what was going on. But, it kind of leads on with that, with you don't see his missing eye until after. So you initially think this is in the present. But they don't actually mention Unicron in here at all, I don't believe. I mean, they mention, Windblade and Earth and stuff, but, it does still, it doesn't spoil anything for Unicron and Optimus Prime. So I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, but I mean, I guess at the minimum, we know that Unicron didn't eat Earth, so at least that's good, I guess.
Well, does he though? Because the scene with Rodimus, with Prowl talking to Rodimus, saying "Come on, we've got to go. I need to check back with Windblade." Isn't that sort of the present essentially? Because that's when they're going to take Megatron away and stuff like that.
Yeah, but I mean, they wouldn't be worried about taking Megatron into custody if Unicron was still threatening the Earth. They'd be, be calling Rodimus saying, "Come here and help us destroy Unicron."
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, there would be too much going on to even worry about the Galactic Council.
Is it set before Unicron?
No, because everyone assumed that Prowl was gone at that point. And he was just out doing his own thing.
Where was Ratchet buried?
Well, that's far in the future. That's after all this stuff is over.
Yeah, but where is it?
Rivetsfield on New Cybertron.
Is on Cybertron.
On the function of Cybertron.
Function of Cybertron.
Yeah.
All right, then.
Which, I mean, most people sort of thought, that's probably what's going to happen anyway. Well, now there's a brand new Cybertron to replace the destroyed one.
It's Chekhov's Cybertron.
Yeah.
One thing I did like about it is in the scene where they're all kind of going their own separate ways, and you you look at the signage, it's very clearly still function of Cybertron. Like, not enough time has passed for them to change the signage. And when Megatron is being hauled away in cuffs, there's graffiti above him saying Megatron will save us. Kind of showing the impact that he had on the function of Cybertron.
Yeah, I didn't notice that until you just pointed that out.
I figured that's why Prowl was like, oh, we need to get the council to be in the jury and stuff like that, because if it had gone to like the Cybertronians on Functionist Cybertron, they would have been like, no, he's a hero, let him go. And Prowl's too smart for that. So there is quite a lot going on in that sort of.
Plus, he wants to use it to get Cybertron to become a member of the Galactic Council.
Yeah.
It's like, the biggest bargaining chip at all, you've ever had.
Yeah, Prowl, even in like the last sort of moments, Prowl is still this like ambitious prick.
Yeah.
But that's why we love Prowl.
Right. With the rung thing, I did read it as the funeral bot was the real rung, even if all of the Lunabots resemble him. I still want to read it as that is the one true rung. And I mean, I kind of was expecting an ending like this where, not specifically that they were going to duplicate the quantum, mishap, but I figured the briefcase and the multiple universes would come into play somehow. And I like that they left it open because, 10 years down the line, people are going to be nostalgic for these stories, and they've left themselves this huge loophole to continue to tell these stories. And I thought that was really smart of him. Yeah, I mean, I think that's great, and I shudder to think of the fanfic that will come out of this, but in terms of official stuff, I could see down the line revisiting this. One last thing I wanted to bring up from TFCon. In Robert's panel, someone asked him, like way back at the beginning, Chrome Dome removed a memory from Prowl. And they asked what that memory was. And Roberts was very clear, like this is non-canon because it didn't actually appear on the page. But the memory he had intended for to be removed was that Chrome Dome was complicit in the Dominus Ambus event, which, obviously would have impacted his relationship with Rewind.
Like he had a hand in making Dominus Ambus Agent 113?
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
To, essentially remove him from the playing field.
Yeah. And he knew that he'd been... So I saw that as well. That he was aware that he'd been domesticated and stuff. Yeah,
non-canon, but I figured I'd relay that right here at the end of everything. So I mean, I enjoyed this book. We knew that there was going to be no action, and just kind of a last retrospective with everybody. I thought it was good for what it was.
All right. I did like seeing Fortress Maximus tell the scavengers, oh, sorry, I tried to kill you.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Oh, one more thing. It seems like Rewind has now become what I guess Epistemus should have been, because they were both like founts of knowledge and they were stuck in their alt mode.
He has all the knowledge of everything. Yeah.
Yeah. Except the one PC news.
All right. Well, we also have Yoshi's thoughts on this issue, so we will wrap up with that.
So I read every word of Lost Light issue 25, and I tried to really absorb everything that was going on in this issue. And I think I have 3 points I want to make as far as the story is concerned, and then I'll talk quickly about the art. But number one, this doesn't feel like James Roberts' normal cadence in writing a book. Like this was like, I gotta, it didn't feel like the story Roberts wanted to end with. I'll start there. This does not feel like that. This felt slightly rushed in concluding what happens to everybody and tying up as many loose ends as possible. That's what it felt like. Two, it felt like trying to have your cake and eat it too. It felt like Roberts was influenced by what he'd been reading from fans online, which brings up a sub question. Where are these fans writing this? I know that there's probably Tumblr communities and stuff, but I have no idea where. And he's totally taking in their thoughts. This is definitely the having your cake and eat it too for the fans in a way. And Robert's trying to make everyone happy. And we all know the saying, you can make some of the people happy all of the time, or all of the people happy some of the time, but you can't make all of the people happy all of the time. And this is what he's trying to do here. He's trying to make all of the people happy, but that never works. And I don't understand why writers continue to try and throw this Hail Mary pass, because it doesn't work. Most of the book is a conclusion of what's going to happen to every character. But then at the end, thanks to some science fiction bullshittery and a special warp drive engine that's in the Lost Light, they duplicate themselves and put themselves in an alternate reality so that there's a version of themselves that's going to play out the way most of the book read, and then this final version of themselves that just gets to go on and keep having adventures. The Star Trek ending, if you will, the third star to the right and keep sailing till morning. I definitely got that vibe here. It's unfortunate because it just kills the story by saying, oh, well, all this stuff's going to happen, but an alternative version of us is going to keep going. You can't have it both ways. You can. He wrote it that way. That's fine. And if you're a fan of this and you're happy with that, great. But I feel like it's a cop-out rather than just giving us a solid ending. Had that ending been just sailing off and continuing adventures, or standing trial and going through all of that, either one, I would have enjoyed that ending personally a lot more. But he's trying to make everybody happy, and that's why I feel like this is not the original ending intended for Lost Light, which is unfortunate. I'd be curious to know what that original ending was, and at what point in the series he started to deviate so that he could write this new ending. Inquiring minds want to know. I also I just want to say that the sentencing that Megatron was going through, where he had a choice of either termination or being hooked up to a machine and forced to live in exile and isolation for the rest of time. At first blush, that was like, dude, we kind of like Megatron, but then you remember Megatron's not a good guy, hasn't been a good guy for the longest time, and has killed many a bot. He's very much deserving of that final sentence, whatever it ended up being. But that's the sign of somebody who wrote a good story. Like, you want the bad guy to be the good guy, and you want to root for him. And man, it's like very Games of Thrones-y the way they were handling that. But again, science fiction bullshittery. We're creating duplicates of ourselves, and we're going to keep going on. Just kind of destroyed all that effort Roberts put into that subplot that I was really enjoying, having personal internal conflicts with, but was really enjoying. And bummer that he fucking did that and kind of just negated the whole thing. I want to talk about the art. This is not Lawrence's best work, and I could probably count his best work on two fingers. Where it stands out to me as bad is especially background characters that are walking around or hugging or doing whatever. They look very anime and very cheesy. His foreground characters are pretty solid this issue, but like, I don't know, man. I was really looking hard through this book to see how much textures LaFuente was putting in, and there are textures throughout this book, but nowhere near the absurd level that would set me off when we originally got together on the podcast and started talking comics. So yeah, I felt like if this book had just ended before their last jaunt on the Last Light, where they were going to use their, warp engine magic to create duplicates of themselves, if it just ended there, I would have been okay with it. I would have liked it more. But I don't know. I don't know why I continue to see this in TV shows and in books I read, where they're just trying to give the cake and eat it too. You can't do that, or at least for me, you can't do that. And from what I read online, people don't like it, and they continue to do it. I don't know, but that's my thoughts. Thanks for hearing me out, and have a good rest of the show.
All right, well, a lot I disagree with there, but the central point about the having the cake and eat it too, I think we all touched on that. So, but also I'll say the saying is you can't fool some people. You can fool some of the people all the time, and all the people some of the time. It's Abraham Lincoln. So
you tell him. I'm going to hear all about it. But yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's interesting because I think Yoshi's opinion on Jack Lawrence's art is kind of, I mean, I think we all prefer Alex Milne's art style to Jack Lawrence's, but I think we were all pretty impressed with Jack Lawrence's art in this issue. So,
I mean, if you compare his issue 1 to issue 25, you can tell he greatly improved once he kind of figured out where he wanted to go with the art. I mean, I think the first few issues was a reaction to him trying to not be Alex, and then realizing that the audience is okay with you not being Alex, but the characters need to have a particular look.
Tough spot to be in, because he either does his own thing and people shit on him for being different, or he tries to copy Milne and everyone goes, "Oh, you're just copying Alex." So I mean, right. Don't get me wrong. His art when it started wasn't amazing, but I mean, if it went for another 20 issues and we had him at that level, I would be fine with it. There's been a lot worse than him on the book.
Yeah, we have a number of artists. I mean, just in the last few issues, we've seen when they all just. We have Casey. We have my mind just
Brendan Cahill.
Brendan Cahill. So a number of people do their own take, and they all have their own style, and that's cool. But it was just, I think at the beginning he was trying too hard to not be Alex, and once he got kind of a handle on integrating his own style with the way that we're used to seeing Transformers from all the artists look, I think it was greatly improved, and this, in my opinion, was his best work that we've seen.
Mm-hmm. I guess one final thing I did notice in the end of of James Roberts' farewell letter, it says he wrote it on September 7th. So why did it take 2 months for us to get this issue?
Yeah, because maybe there's a duplicate universe where it didn't take 2 months to get.
There's a duplicate universe where DC and Marvel are at the bottom of Diamond's list, and IDW doesn't.
Yeah. That too. Yeah.
All right. Well, that is our review of Lost Light number 25. So we will leave it there and move on to Transformers Media News.
All right, in media news this week, Forged to Fight introduced Beast Wars Scorponok into the mix. So if you're a fan of that character and you're still playing Forged to Fight, there you go. The model they showed off looks pretty good. moving on, we've got a lot of Bumblebee movie news. We are, looks like, just over a month away from its release at the time of the recording, and we're going to see a lot of this. So, Bumblebee, new still from the movie, introduces us to Charlie's dog, Conan. Okay.
Conan, like the barbarian. Not like the talk show host.
Better name than Mojo.
Tomato, tomato. I say Conan. You say ambulance. Yeah, so there's a dog in it. His name is Conan or Conan, and cool. We have from the Luca Comics and Games show in Italy. They showed off the first 10 minutes of the movie, so that's cool. From everything that's come back from it, it's everyone seems pretty happy with it. So we have a new single from the movie is performed by Hailee Steinfeld. It's called "Back to Life." It's available right now on the streaming services, I believe. So you should be able to hear that. Apple Music, you can buy it, and Spotify, you can stream it. So there you go.
And it's on YouTube too. We have the link on YouTube, so you can actually just listen to it.
Cool.
Straight from YouTube.
All right, moving on. We got an extended TV spot and live performance by Hailee Steinfeld. So this was at the she hosted this year's MTV EMA Awards, and she performed her new song "Back to Life" on stage, and and then they aired an extended TV spot clocked in at a minute. Cool. Apparently there's a new trailer coming out as well. We don't have it yet, but it's a minute and 40 seconds, so look for that sometime soon.
Yeah, it might be out by the time this show goes up. That's what they're speculating.
Oh. Bumblebee, the movie, Empire Magazine scans, and Travis Knight interview. So we've got a new interview with Travis Knight here. I like the picture that they have of him. He's just sitting there staring at scenes and going through and showing what he wants. Like everything's that's I'm assuming it was what's done is X'd out. So yeah, that looks pretty neat. So yeah, if you want to read this and get some more info, there is a spoiler warning on this interview. So if you want to stay unspoiled, you maybe want to avoid this. All right, so moving on to Transformers Cyberverse, we have the previews of episodes 10 through 12 from Cartoon Network. And episode 10, as of this recording, is now available on YouTube. You guys would have got it in the US this weekend. So, yeah. And that is the episode that I myself am really happy with. They really did a really good job with that one. And from everything I can tell, last weekend and this weekend here in Canada, they've been repeating previous episodes to kind of let everyone catch up to where they are. So I think episode 10 was repeated this past weekend. So yeah, hopefully everyone's getting a chance to watch episode 10, because that's a really awesome episode. And we can maybe talk about it in detail in an upcoming alt mode when we have a few more future episodes to discuss. And that's it for media news.
All right, let's finish up the show with some convention news.
All right, we mentioned this in the other show, but it bears repeating as this does impact comic and media fans. TFCon 2019, or TFCon USA 2019, will be March 15th through 17th in Los Angeles, specifically in Burbank. Looks like it's at the Los Angeles Marriott Burbank. And they're advertising it as a G1 reunion. So, look for lots of G1 voice actors. Hopefully they get Frank Welker and Peter Cullen, but they haven't announced any guests for sure yet. So that's it.
All right, and that takes us to the end of the show. So again, we want to thank Greig from the Unfunny Nerd Tangent for coming on. So Greig, tell everyone where they can find you on the internet and find your stuff.
Well, we do a podcast. Obviously, it's called Unfunny Nerd Tangent, and we because whatever topic we begin talking about, we do often go on tangents about anything and everything that's not necessarily to do with the topic at hand. And there's we've done 61 episodes now, a whole bunch of stuff. It's been going for about 2 years, so most of the major blockbusters and big time movies in the last couple of years we've covered, as well as there's quite a lot of retro shows where we go back and just pick a movie that we think is a fun one or something to review, and we give our thoughts and various spoiler heavy episodes, especially. We've just released the latest one, which is episode 61, which another retro show where we're actually talking about planes, trains, and automobiles, the Steve Martin, John Candy comedy from 1987. So, yeah, if you're looking for something a little different heading into the holidays, check that one out. And but we've covered nearly everything. There's Star Wars, all the DC movies, the Marvel movies, plenty of stuff there. Things like Stranger Things on Netflix, and we did a Kevin Smith episode. There's something there for everyone. If you head to unfunnynerdtangent.com, that will give you links to the podcast, as well as being on iTunes and Stitcher and all those hosts. And you could head to unfunnynerdtangent.com if you're looking for movie reviews as well, because I'm doing this weird thing where I turned 40 in February, and back when it was 40 weeks to go, I started my series called 40 for 40, which is one article a week for 40 weeks, and at the end of that, I will be 40, and it's a review of my 40 favorite films of all time. So there's been quite a few in there at the moment. Raiders of the Lost Ark, Transformers, the movie from 86. There's one there. That one was quite popular. Godfather, Aliens, the whole bunch of stuff. And there's some coming up. The one this week that's dropped is The Thing, which is the Kurt Russell, John Carpenter film. You can check out our show also on Twitter. It's at UnfunnyNTangent. And I am at Greig T13. It's at GREIGT13. But yeah, thanks very much for having me on again. Massive fan of More Than Meets the Eye and Lost Light and most of the IDW stuff. So I'm sad to see it go, but eager to see what's next in the pipeline.
All right, thanks. And yeah, we are also eager to see what's coming, what's going to be next for IDW's Transformers comics, but it looks like we're going to be waiting a few months since we don't know. We won't have any information for a little while, since they didn't announce anything at New York Comic Con, so that tells me it's going to be a little while, but we'll see. All right, that'll do it for this week's Transmissions Alt Mode. So thanks everyone for listening, and we will see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Later.
Hey everyone, thanks for listening to this episode of Transmissions. But just because this episode is over doesn't mean the Transformers fun has to stop. Join us and other Transformers fans on our Discord chat server by visiting transmissionspodcast.com/Discord. If you would like to learn more about how you could support the Transmissions Podcast, just visit transmissionspodcast.com/support. Thank you all for listening, and we'll see you again next week.
I was working the entire time trying to get that Hailee Steinfeld song on my iPad so I could play a little bit.
Oh.
And I didn't get it in time. I'm like,
it's okay. I mean,
I haven't heard it. Let me play a little bit.
I mean, I listened to it. It's a generic pop song. It's fine.